I know I say this every Wednesday, but I've got to create some sort of nice opening for closing in.
That's a good idea, because we are indeed finally closing in.
An opening for closing.
Yeah.
How are you this morning? Well, this afternoon, I should say, Charles. This is an early edition. You had to close in a little early today because there really is a quickening to everything that's happening with the election almost upon us. Virtually everyone being censored from the internet in one way or another. It's quite surprising what's been going on. You know, Charles, I did a really fantastic segment with Laura Loomer yesterday. I think everybody should check it out. Laura is absolutely on fire, going all around the country and getting in Keith Ellison's face and Michael Avenatti's face. Laura is so brave, it's incredible. I really can't give her enough credit for everything that she's doing. She was talking all about basically Linda Sarsour's connections to various Muslim Brotherhood factions and people that were involved in the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. Oh, that camera's in a weird position. We can see a monitor right there. But people should definitely check that out, and people should support Laura. There's so much going on with people being closed out of social media right now. It's more important than ever for people who are watching to support their favorite independent news outlets. Hopefully Crowdsource The Truth will be one of those, and it's the end of the month. Tomorrow is November, so now is a great time for people to go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and sponsor the show. Even if people aren't interested in seeing the exclusive content on Patreon, we've got an amazing episode of the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp coming. I was just with Kevin in Washington, D.C. on essentially a secret mission, and we did a really fantastic whistleblowers roundtable with Bill Binney and John Kiriakou. So that's going to be actually offered on all platforms, but the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp is yet another show that's available only on Patreon. So hopefully people will watch that.
Good, that's good. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
And of course, we're doing this today at noon as opposed to doing it at 5 because it's Halloween.
Right.
And getting
You've
around.
got to get your costume together.
Yeah, I've got to go out and get my, what is it, Truman?
Yes, exactly.
Truman costume.
What a missed opportunity. I should have got a Truman the Tiger costume for you, Charles.
But already, where I live is sort of the epicenter of the parade. And it would be virtually impossible for me to do the show at 5 and then get back to where I live in any reasonable period of time. So thank you for accommodating me.
No problem.
And letting us do the show early. And but it's really sort of sad. Walking here on the street, I saw numerous people who should not have been wearing the idiotic costumes. You know, there comes a time when you're 6 and you're a little kid, it's kind of cute to wear a costume, and then when 12, maybe, college, maybe. You know, and at 30, you don't walk around in like stuffed animal costumes.
Well, if you want to be Truman the Tiger, I mean, you know.
I'm not doing that. We just have a Truman or whatever.
So, should we get right into the
Sure.
slides, Charles? I know you've got a lot to share with us today, and there's some interesting things happening in the news with our least favorite former.
You're driving right by the art department. I mean,
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
we got to give homage, femage, whatever the right term is, to the art department. I mean, this. Actually, people, I think, guess by now that if you care what I enjoy in movies, I really like stupid comedies more than anything else, and action movies. But this movie is really, in real life, I think, one of the funniest things. I, as a young person, had an opportunity to learn how to ski in Aspen, and so this movie is set in part at Aspen, and it brings back many happy memories of my having been there now for many decades. But the premise is hysterical, and really taking a gigantic step back. We're going to be talking about this in some depth, considerable depth in the slides. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have been sold to the American public as these geniuses, that we can't. I remember there was one breathless commentator who said, and I think it was Chris Matthews, he said, in 2009, maybe the thing the reason we're having trouble understanding Barack Obama is he's just so much smarter than all of us. Like, Chris, Jesus.
I was going to say, maybe they don't speak idiot.
Yeah. and honestly, when you look at the scripted ways in which audiences are assembled, fawning audience, they're not quite so big for Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton anymore, but these throngs of pre-screened people go to events and they wait for Barack Obama to say things that are supposed to be revealed wisdom, but in fact are empty platitudes. And in the same with Hillary Clinton, she was pitched to us as one of the smartest women lawyers ever, one of the 20 most admired people on the planet, and all this kind of stuff. Who are you actually talking to? Do you go down to like the loony bin and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and so interview those people? Oh, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, yeah, amazing. I mean, look at the mess, and we're going to talk about some specifics in a minute. Look at the messes that occurred first under the first Clinton presidency, and then under the hopefully first and last Obama presidency.
Yeah.
But we could see Michelle Obama. I know she's protesting that she's not interested, but that's exactly the way people would set up for the run. You'd say, I'm not interested.
Right.
Look for the draft Michelle movement. And then reluctantly, we thought about it, and okay, we're going to do it. But these two really have succeeded, particularly in the first Obama term, in dressing up foreign policy and economic messes as successes. And then they almost succeeded. You think about it here today, they almost succeeded, these two and the Obama administration, in having Hillary Clinton be the 45th president of the United States, and just try to imagine how much worse we would be. It has nothing to do with gender. It has nothing to do with ethnicity. It has everything to do with being fraudsters masquerading as sensible politicians, fraudsters who were in a position to stop the rot that really set in on the heels of the Bush years, which were no picnic. I was not happy with either Bush, but they had an opportunity, January 20th, 2009, to truly reset America's relations around it, to truly think through, does it make sense for the United States to be engaged in these protracted wars around the world with no clear exit strategy, no clear idea of what winning means? Did it make sense to do that? Did it make sense to let the banksters get away with the frauds that they got away with before Barack Obama became president? Did it make sense to have the deep state continue to get deeper and thicker and richer and more entangled around? No, it didn't make any sense at all. And so finally, I think, after a protracted period here where people have been crying in their safe spaces, wishing that the smell underneath the Christmas tree was actually some kind of fancy present and not horse excrement. We've got a new election coming up soon. Eyes are opened. By this time next week, we're either going to be in for a miserable period, and I think that would be if by some faint chance Democrats took control of the Senate and the House. I think the likelihood of that is very, very low. But if they weasel their way into getting control of the House, we're going to be in a protracted period of antagonism between, even worse than it has been in the past. Investigations will mount. Any economic progress you'd hope for will grind to a halt and go into reversal. We could be in that place a week from today. Alternatively, we could be in that Will and Grace. I don't know if you ever watched Will and Grace, but she did this. Grace would do this in character, this hysterical "I told you so" dance, and we could be in that place where Donald Trump is doing the "I told you so" dance, and it increases control in the Senate and holds on to the House. He definitely will be gloating and moving at light speed to get as much of his agenda completed as possible in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's a pivotal week ahead for us.
Absolutely. I'll be looking forward to the Democrats falling on their faces like Hillary Clinton on a September afternoon.
She knows how to do falling, that's true.
Well, one last note on today's image, Charles. I did take the liberty of making Mrs. Clinton look a little bit cockeyed, as you might be able to detect there. I couldn't quite illustrate the Fresnel lens effect, but I think this really gets the idea across.
Yeah. And is that the Scooby-Doo van in the middle there?
Oh, I should have. Yeah, I could have put her van, and then we would have to have it crashing into a fence if it was her van.
And what happened to did Barack Obama go to is dentistry covered under Obamacare?
Yeah, that was another thing.
Out-of-plan dentist or something?
Well, because I think in the movie, Lloyd Christmas is missing a tooth or has a chipped tooth or something, and it was like a digital effect, because Jim Carrey, I believe, has all his teeth, or at least
he may
the
not have all
ones
his
that we can
marbles,
see.
but he has all his teeth.
Right, exactly. It's the gift that keeps on giving from a photographic standpoint. Barack Obama.
Well done. So, as we like to do in these slides, today we're actually going to be breaking some news and providing some real hard evidence to these investigators who seem to be taking a lot of time to getting a slam dunk case across the finish line here. But the people who are dumb and dumber are Bill and Hillary and Chelsea and Barack Obama and anyone who still wants to sell the fiction that the last 8 years under Barack Obama, and really we've been saying 30 years since 1988, are a victory for anybody except the deep state and the corrupt crony globalists around the world. I mean, I would argue an entire American generation has been lost in this period. 1988 to the present, you're talking about 30-year-olds who have never known a period where traditional ways of studying, thinking, of questioning what is truth and what is fiction, of operating in business, of selling real products instead of playing Candy Crush while you're on Facebook with Twitter, and there's an entire generation that has been lost, I think, and it's going to take a lot of effort to bring that generation back to understanding that, there's a gigantic world out there. Any American is extremely lucky, even the poorest among us, because we are the largest integrated market in the world. The consumption per capita, what we spend on daily living, is the highest in the world, and it could be lower, actually. One might argue that we're wastefully consuming certain things, but we're in a very happy place, even though, what is his name, Farrell doesn't want Trump to
he gave him a cease and desist.
Unhappy. I mean, since when did he patent happy?
Well, it is his song.
Well, anybody could play a song, right?
I think it's got to do, I'm sure Trump had lawyered this through or they wouldn't be doing it, but I presume it's got to do with whether or not they're selling tickets to the thing, and I think because it's free, it's a public thing, I think he's allowed to play it.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Because the Rolling Stones also didn't want him, and he was like, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Too bad.
Yeah, well, so what's happened is that in the many months that you and I have been working on this, Jason, others have been working as well. And we have this hard deadline that no one's been focused on, except for you and me and our viewers who care about this, where a large number of private foundations and the Clinton Foundation have to provide and get from a serious auditing firm, not from that Madoff auditing firm above the Chinese restaurant in upstate New York or wherever it is. You got to get real serious audits performed according to generally accepted accounting principles inside and outside the United States of America. And we're going to go into this a bit today. The regulations are strict. It's not like doing this presentation here where I can write what I want. If you want to get an audit out of an independent, licensed, certified...
I think we need an image of Eric Hansen, Truman the Tiger, and Bernie Madoff eating Chinese food.
I think that's good. What would we call the restaurant? Yeah, Clinton's Chop Suey.
You got to think
whatever.
about
But they're in a place here where these entities, by 2 weeks from now, have got to satisfy the strict demands, and answer strict questions posed by any accounting firm that might want to go out of business by attempting to provide an audit, as is legally required, outside date, November 15th, 2018. Can't go past that date. It's a final filing deadline in New York, where I would argue this Clinton Foundation has been domiciled, and if not organized, in quotes, operating in New York State since 2001. The preponderance of their office space, forgetting, the stuff that's used for the museum and the library, the working space has always been in New York in a variety of offices, some known and some secret, so that if you were going to try to make the kind of case that the Attorney General of New York is making against Trump, you would look at the paperwork and you'd say, I don't care if it's organized in Arkansas in theory. This thing has been directed from New York City and Chappaqua, and you have, your residents, the Clintons, well, all Clintons are residents of New York State. This is a New York enterprise. It's a New York criminal racketeering enterprise. And you've got this deadline, November 15th, 2018, and you can't walk your way through it, talk your way through it.
Why did they select New York, Charles? She immediately after they left the White House, I remember it was very conspicuous how Bill Clinton opened his office in Harlem, and it sort of gentrified the whole area. And then I remember shortly after that I saw Spike Lee somewhere talking about how black people in Harlem didn't like that because it raised the rent, and people who were there for many, many years and generations were basically pushed out. And I mean, we hear a lot how things like this are like the improvement of a neighborhood like that. And I'm not really a fan of Spike Lee, but it was interesting to hear that point of view.
Right. So on that one, what happened was Senator Patrick Moynihan retired before the Clintons decided where they were going to actually live. And that created a fairly clear path for Hillary Clinton in that it has traditionally been easier for a Democrat, particularly a popular Democrat, to get elected. And as a senator, that happened, for example, with Robert Kennedy, I think. I may have that wrong, but if you're a Democrat and you want to be a senator and you're in with the Democratic elites, there's a clear path for you, particularly if you can get money. And so they saw that path, and they selected Chappaqua. In time, many books written about this, that if she hadn't bought that house, if Terry McAuliffe hadn't made it possible for Hillary Clinton to get the money together to buy that thing in Chappaqua, she wouldn't have had domicile in time or residence in time to run and seek being a senator from New York. So that was a very critical transaction which happened when McAuliffe, or just as McAuliffe, went on the board of the Clinton Foundation, and all that stuff should have been disclosed and wasn't disclosed. And
look at these chess moves behind the scenes that people don't even know about.
Well,
I mean, that's not on Fox. That's not,
Right.
When you look at all of the steps that have been taken that are like these interlocking maneuvers, it's so sinister.
Yeah, and so what's happened that I honestly had not projected would happen is, and it's not truly out of the blue, but out of the blue I'll say, all of a sudden, we talked about it on Sunday, GE didn't just miss on Tuesday. It was as if you take Hillary Clinton's swan dive on September 11th, 2016 into the pavement or into a car, and you raise it, you kick it up, as Emerald would say, kick it up a notch, and here you announce that this massive
It's going down as we look at it.
Where is it now?
9.83.
983. I mean, so what happens on this is a very dangerous moment for GE because the degree to which it has gone down in a rising market. I mean, it went down yesterday at almost 9%. At one point, it was up 10% down in a market that was up 400 points.
Wow.
Today, the market's up, I think, over 1%, and GE is down, 3% now?
3.34.
I mean, and the problem for GE is when you're in a losing cause like this, and you're somebody who's patiently been saying, I can't tell you the number of times I had over the course of 10 years conversations with wealthy friends who would have had GE stock that their grandfather bought, or whatever. They had a low basis stock, meaning that that
paid very
for them
little
it was like 25 cents a share, and if
Wow.
you sell it today at whatever, they would say, well, I can't sell at 30, think of the capital gains tax. I said, well, think what happens when the stock goes to 2. You're not going to be happy about that.
Be happy about the savings of capital gains.
Right. It's like, we can save you capital gains
Yeah.
the hard way.
Tank the stock.
So here's this guy, and we were wondering, I was wondering, you were wondering, this director of GE who has a young guy in his 50s, spectacular track record until Tuesday, when he turned around this Danaher company and he made a lot of money for the shareholders, Danaher, and for himself. He has experience with the conglomerate, and I was really hoping that this dude would get up yesterday and do a different presentation than the standard happy horseshit coming out of GE management. But no, they just marked up the last umpty-ump versions of these quarterly releases. And just digress, is it Larry Culp? Yeah.
I think he's culpable.
Very good. I like that. Larry Culpable Culp.
He does look pretty young.
He's in his 50s, I think.
He's got a boyish look.
Yeah. Kind of like Truman.
So he just started there October 1st. Boy, what a job.
Well, he's been on the board, though, you see, of GE as well. See, he retired from Danaher as a success. Then he went on GE's board, and he was so he had some pre-existing knowledge of this. He should have had some knowledge of the company. Gets a chance to look at it from the inside. They delayed the standard date of this quarterly release to give him enough time to travel around to some key things. And I was hopeful that he would get up there and say, all these old ways we did it, where we have this approximate press release that's filled with jargon and doesn't give you the hard numbers. We don't give you the quarterly report, which is called a 10Q. I don't know if they gave the 10Q this time. We give you these numbers, which are just, we tell you that in this quarter, I think they announced a loss over $2 a share. The stock's trading at $9.90. You lose $2 in a quarter.
That's a lot.
That's like, that's like I failed, miserably. And you should be looking at this, and you should, be saying, I'm in here. We're going to do things differently. This is what we're going to change. We're going to report to you differently. This idea that we have these business lines that are not really companies, and we don't give you any real visibility into the geographic spread of our operations. We constantly restructure. We constantly take these reserves. We constantly miss expectations. We have these gigantic operations with big market shares around the world, yet we can't put points on the board. And now we're going to cut our dividend yet again, having said the last time we cut our dividend that it would never happen. I mean, it's just, I would have, in his position, I question why he is even the CEO at this point. Because he had money in the bank. He had been part of the problem as an outside director that missed all this stuff. And my advice to him, had anyone asked, would be like, exeunt stage left, or it means, I guess, all the stuff. Yes.
1 month CEO, and that's it.
I'm out of here.
Wow.
It's getting cold, and I kind of like it in Hawaii, so that's where I'm going to go.
What is this Danaher company, Charles?
It's Danaher. It's the two Danaher, I think it was the Danaher brothers, became a public company. It's a mini GE.
But the dental?
It's a mini GE. And again, this whole concept of conglomerates, which we're going to talk about a little bit now, back when I was alive as a banker in the 80s and 90s, whatever, the theory was that, initially the theory was that conglomerates made sense because somebody like a Jack Welch, who in his prime was a very, accepted and successful manager, can seize more of the industrial and service world than an expert in one small corner of it. So you get an expert to join a GE or join a Danaher, and with the wisdom of Jack Welch and all these extra connections, you can help this company, instead of being just this little expert over here, widen its scope, maybe by acquisitions or introducing new products, extend its reach internationally, geographically inside the U.S. and internationally. I mean, there are arguments that were made as to why it could make sense to put a whole pile of businesses together. Then the counter argument became, now wait a minute, I don't need a whole bunch of, executives sending PowerPoint charts back and forth to each other in meetings where they're inventing this jargon and that stock option plan and paying themselves a lot of money. I don't need that. I don't need all that overhead and all that wasted time and energy. I can go out on the stock market and I can buy shares in this pure play thing over here, and I don't have all this overhead associated with the wisdom of Jack Welch, and all this mumbo jumbo garbage. And that's really the way people began to invest. You didn't have to pay an acquisition premium, to get this little thing over here. You just bought the shares. And then, that expanded, unfortunately, in the recent period where the number of individual pure plays went down. Now we have this phenomenon where people who don't even want to think about investing will say, I like food. I'll buy the food ETF. I like, whatever, the sports ETF.
Food's not going anywhere.
Yeah, food's only making me fat, whatever. And so these ETFs, my simple way of thinking at it is a manufactured extra demand.
What's ETF?
An exchange traded fund. It's something that basically they put pools of different. It's like a supermarket,
Oh yeah, they wanted to make a Bitcoin ETF.
Oh, they'll do that too.
The Winklevosses. Charles, Kevin is telling us that on October 9th, GE was at 13.7, and so that's a 28% drop in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's
Not
impressive.
Good. Not good.
Bad. Hugely bad. Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. That's right. Exactly right. And you can go further back. It's fallen off a cliff. And I started to say that when you see a stock accelerate its trend down, that's a warning sign for anybody who's experienced in investing. You say, well, I need to get out yesterday, because if we continue at this pace, it's going to be below 5. If it gets below 5, then institutional investors, they can't be in the stock. They've got to get out of that.
Why?
There's just rules. There's certain rules that you can't be in. Certain size institutions can't be in certain small type of stocks. And
so it changes kind of the overall value of the company. That it's really
right. It's very interesting. It's kind of, you see this a lot actually. When bubbles inflate. They inflate because people are saying, "Oh, my friend over here, he was a schlub. He couldn't even keep his lawn trimmed, and he bought shares of Facebook, and now I have to hear lectures that every time we go out to Chili's for dinner, I got to hear about this guy. He's worth $2 million. I better get some of that stuff. I better get some Facebook.
Paying for the empanadas.
Exactly. Plus, I got to pay for the empanada.
Extra guac with that.
Exactly. And so it's just, we're in with GE the opposite of that cycle. In the up, when everything's soaring up, people abandon all common sense and they buy more and more and more, and they lose their shirt. And similarly, when it's going down, you can get the greedy people say, well, Jack Welch. GE under Jack Welch was $60 a share in May of 2006. 2000 rather, May. That was 18 years ago. It's now at 6. One day it's going to go back up to 60. I'll wait another 18 years.
What about 0?
Yeah, exactly. What about Chapter 11? And then you don't get back. You can get back to 60 in a different security.
But if Chapter 11 happens and you're invested in the company, then what? You lose all your money?
Well, if it's equity, you will basically lose most of your money. If it's debt, you might get some of your money back.
It's not good. It's not good.
Okay. But what we have here is this convergence before November 15th, 2018, of massive troubles at GE that were, quote, unexpected by many, but you'll find out shortly they weren't unexpected by me, and massive troubles at the Clinton Foundation at the same time. And you put yourself in the minds of these accountants who are now tasked, as we're going to explain to you, when you render an accounting opinion on the basis of information which you subsequently discover is false, for any period on and after December 15th, 2012, under certain circumstances, you have an affirmative obligation as the CPA firm to go back to the Clinton Foundation and say, hey, Bruce, Lindsay, and Messy Andrew Kessel, you've got your signatures all over these letters claiming that everything's hunky-dory, that you're valid. And that's not true. It's obviously not true. And we got to restate, Truman, you've been a bad tiger. We got to go back into this history. And anybody who's been relying on these accounting statements has got to be told, you can't rely on these statements anymore, because if we don't do that, if management doesn't do that and the company doesn't refile, then when the Clinton Foundation frauds are fully exposed, you're going to have lawsuit city against the accounting firms. So the accounting firms are going to, I think, fall over themselves now. They better fall over themselves to rush around to the various government authorities and say, do not rely on my BKD work to satisfy the requirement in New York State of having a real audit. You can't rely on my work, New York State. And then then PwC has to say, well, you can't rely on my work either. And Cohn Resnick has to say, you can't rely on my work. All as Dumb Schmuck and Company, whoever's going to be the new accounting firm, has to get an audit prepared at the same time that these other three firms are saying you can't rely on any of our work.
Isn't it possible that no accounting firm will do it?
It's very possible. That would be the correct thing. If I were Hansen, Eric Hansen, or if I were a director of this AICPA, which I think actually may be organized as a foundation of all things.
What?
If I were in any way exposed legally in the organization structure of the AICPA, I'd be telling Eric Hansen, why don't you spend a lot of time with Truman? In fact, all your time with Truman until we sort this mess out.
Eric Hansen's got a lot of. Truman is what, for football? This guy's got a lot of season tickets ahead of him.
Yeah, exactly. He can watch reruns.
Yeah.
So we've got this intense period of pressure that I had. I knew the November 15th deadline was rough, but I didn't know that we'd also have this issue of the accounting firms struggle with themselves. And then, I believe these certain accounting firms, because I get LinkedIn searches that show various of them are searching for me, and I imagine other people are searching. Then they've got to ask, okay, who is this idiot Ortel? Why is he doing this? Does he have any experience looking at financial statements? Oh yeah, he's the guy, there were others before me, but I made the biggest fuss. He's the guy who said in 2007, 8, and 9 that GE was in serious trouble, and he has ever since then said it's going to go into bankruptcy eventually.
So when it was 60, you were saying...
Not 60. When it was 40, I started, August 31st, 2007, I recommended in writing, having talked extensively to certain people, that this was going down. It was a fantastic short sale, and I pounded the table around the world. I literally traveled around the world at my expense to warn many of my friends that GE, not only was GE in serious trouble, but the implications for the wider world, that if GE can't make a go of it, then why should Danaher or a smaller company, a company that is as big as GE once was, that had a moat in theory around it in its premier high market share positions and difficult industries that are tough to crack, if they can't make a go of it, what does that tell you about the state of the world? It told me back then too much capacity. The capacity had not been restructured around the world, that changes in technology were allowing you, for example, to do with Crowdsource the Truth what would have been impossible 15 years ago.
Or even 5 years ago.
Right. So when in essence, there's a lot more capacity. I was told by somebody, and I haven't checked it, that there's now more news content on YouTube by far than there is generally on all news media. YouTube is supposedly, by one set of metrics, bigger. So you have this situation where there's tremendous excess capacity, where there's tremendous dislocations going on, and where there's been no effective regulation of these multinational companies, because there's no world government, there's no world taxing authority, there's no world regulator. And so these globalists have gotten behind companies like GE and charities like the various Clinton foundations and let these things run riot around the world out of control, not audited properly. And in the case of GE, piling on way too much debt, buying back the stock. Everyone always focuses on investing on the upside. And they don't look at something and say, the price of a stock is actually the present value of its upside and its downside, right? Because the way you should be thinking about how much could I lose, and what's the probability that I lose, and how much could I win? And it's not, every stock has a downside. Some, unfortunately, in the case of the fund manager that invested a hedge fund into GE and put its people on the board of GE in not a contested effort, but via a proxy contest. That fund, I would argue, the general partner of that fund has serious liability.
Doing some kind of scam? No,
it's just if you go out and you raise a fund to put money into various public companies, you owe duties to your fund investors. And if you then say, okay, what I'm going to do, my strategy is to get profits for my investors, I'm going to insist that people in my firm get placed on the board of the investee company. Well, if you're on the board of the investee company, you could have a conflict between that role and the fund role, particularly if GE heads towards bankruptcy. Which it may be. And I should say up front, I do not have an investment of any kind in GE either way. I'm not touting my game or my family's game. It had nothing to do with this public mess. Because the way I like to think about investing is, I tell this story, I'll tell it again. I have some friends who, I won't say the country they're from, but they came into this country and they said, hey, we want to go to a baseball game. Well, that's the last thing I wanted to do. And so I thought, okay, we'll go to a baseball. These people bet, large sums of cash amongst each other, taking the bills out on each stop as we headed on the subway train out to wherever the stadium was. They would bet whether an odd or an even number of people would get off the train at each stop.
Wow.
And that's, can you make money doing that? Yeah. But that certainly is not investing. That is just speculating. That's playing games. And when I see a company like a GE that to me seems like just one big unregulated game, do I want to play that game and maybe make money or buy a lotto ticket? That's not investing.
Charles, that's pretty interesting to me that your super rich friends are betting on nonsense on the subway, but it's
This was a long time ago.
But whatever, it's an interesting aspect of that type of personality, someone who's in that investing world and has so much money but still has the need for...
These to be fair, these were younger friends of mine. I was in my 30s, they were in their 20s. And so these were just kids they were not yet serious investors or whatever. They were just, they had some extra money and and I won't give away the country. There's some countries where people are,
China?
I'm not going to give away the country, are, nice try.
But they love betting in China.
I'm not going to give away.
The MGM Grand changed the entrance of its hotel because when they did it had a giant lion's mouth, and Chinese people would not walk through the mouth of a lion because it had some sort of religious or cultural significance. So MGM Grand changed it. It's like when they have those ads in foreign languages and it's like an ad for Pepsi that says like "eat your grandparents" or something. Didn't proofread it in Chinese.
So I suppose we could move to the next slide. I get a little...
Yeah, so this is our standard disclaimer, Charles.
It is indeed. And what we're trying to do here, I went, and hats off to the Bloomberg people who were kind enough to have me at a crowdfunding conference yesterday, which was, Bloomberg conferences, I always learn something. I always meet some interesting people and learn something. So I like going to them from time to time. But what we're doing here, and we were sort of talking a little bit about this at the conference yesterday, what we are doing, what we're all engaged here in, is very different than reading the Wall Street Journal on your way into work. This has been a journey, and thank you to those people who are watching the show and recommending it and sharing it. This has been a journey where we've been trying to prod regulators to do the correct thing here, have a Spike Lee moment, do the right thing. We hadn't, until this morning, been focused, or today, on GE as much as we now will focus on it because it's in the frame. But we're talking here about, in my opinion, massive frauds. And the only way that massive frauds get prosecuted is if the general public stands up with one voice and says, across the political spectrum, I may be for messing around in the Middle East or against it, but most people, and there are very few people who are, pro-fraud, the pro-fraud party.
The Clintons certainly are among
they're all, and the Obamas may be rushing into it. Spartacus seemingly may be interested in fraud, but...
Cory Booker.
Yeah, well, it would seem. But what does unite, I think, Americans, whether you're rich or poor, you want to have a sense, you may distrust the system, but you'd like to believe that laws are administered fairly, without fear or favor, whether you're rich or poor, regardless of your ethnicity, your gender, whatever. You'd like to think that the laws are administered fairly, and what we specialize in, or I in particular specialize in, are evaluating information and instances that are in the public domain, maybe with the benefit of a slightly different career path than many in the audience. So I've seen a lot of deals, I've seen a lot of questionable things, I've seen a lot of good things. And what we try to do is show you what I'm seeing and what Jason is seeing, give you the links to the supporting material so you can, at your own time and pace, think through what we're saying. And if you agree with our conclusions, please reach out to the regulators. Reach out to people in Congress and the Senate. Reach out to Donald Trump. Reach out to the media personalities who've been trying to help here. People like John Solomon and Sarah Carter and Sean Hannity and Janine Pirro and many others, Utrice Lead at Progressive Radio. Reach out to these people and say, listen, you know, if we're searching for a way to unite this country, let's clamp down on these frauds. Let's get serious about draining the swamp. Let's ask some tough questions about, you know, this unregulated globalism that cronies like to promote around the world. Let's ask and answer the question of how come none of the banksters from the 2007 to 9 people are, you know, served extensive jail prisons.
What happened to Hank Paulson? Where is he?
Free as a bird. What happened to Corzine, John Corzine? I mean, you know, there's been an unholy alliance where money and favor has been trafficked through these unregulated entities, the GEs and the Clinton Foundation. And, you know, grown-ups need to stand up and say, this is not in anybody's interest. If you're let's assume you're a teacher, you know, who's not particularly interested in money per se, but goes into teaching because he or she knows that upon retirement, he or she will be getting a substantial pension. And that is really the benefit that many teachers do get. You care that the investing world and that the charity world are regulated fairly. You don't want to see, let's say you're a private school teacher, you don't want to go work for some private school and then have the IRS say, you know what, you're not a school. You're an influence peddling machine. You know, you're enriching the teachers, you're enriching the headmaster, you're letting the billionaires buy places for their kids. This isn't a school, this is a taxable corporation. It should not have the tax. You don't want that to happen to you in the teaching world, and you don't want to find out that teachers, whatever it is, TIAA, has taken a lot of money and put it into GE, which it did. Well, I mean, you don't want that. So this is an exercise where I would encourage the Crowdsource the Truth community to view ourselves as a community of shared interests. And what we're trying to do here, at least with these shows, is be that extra bit of energy that causes Chuck Grassley to lift up his hand and say, you know, enough of this. You know, we are not going to let GE get away with this, and we are not going to let the Clintons get away with this. We're not going to let the Obamas get away with it. And show us, Clinton Foundation, show us your financial statements, show us some real audits. And by the way, BKD and PwC and Cohn Resnick and whoever else may be involved in this, you know, Arthur Andersen is not in business anymore. Maybe they were put away for the wrong reasons. We have the right reasons to put firms away if they want to bless this Clinton Foundation fraud now by November 15th.
Why the wrong reasons? I thought they were shredding at Arthur Andersen.
Well, apparently, so the Arthur Andersen decision was not processed. It was the decision to shut Andersen folded because they had to fold. Their clients were fleeing them. But later, many years later, there is a court case that shows that it was basically wrongfully put out of business.
What?
Yeah,
wow. But it was Enron it had to do with, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I thought they were shredding documents related to Enron.
Right.
The thing I always think about is, okay, Arthur Andersen goes out of business, but whoever it is at Arthur Andersen that was doing that shredding just went to go work for some other accounting firm.
Or some other consulting firm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's got to be, the regulatory system, in my view, I'm not a huge fan of big regulatory systems, but the one that we have in this country is antiquated, and it needs to be brought into the 21st century. So if we go to the next page here, and
but wait, we should remind people that if they aren't currently following you on Twitter, Charles, it's a great place to go if you want to be shadow banned. There's been a lot going on with Twitter. People should definitely check out that segment with Laura from yesterday. And this is your Twitter page right here, Charles. People can find you there at Charles Ortel. There you go, moving up a little bit, 32.5. It's interesting to see what's going on with Twitter. I think people who've been watching the show for a long time will remember that you used to remark basically weekly or each time we would do the show at the increase in Twitter followers, but that's basically stopped. I can't seem to get past 24.3, but people can follow me on Twitter at CS The Truth. It's important to follow Twitter, particularly now that all of this social media banning is going on. You know, Gab.ai has been totally shut down, Charles. That's crazy. I mean, every crazy killer they've had so far, whether it's Adam Lanza or whoever, you know, whoever is shooting up whatever it is that's getting shot up, they are always posting crazy things on Facebook, on Twitter. But then they're shutting down Gab because the synagogue shooter apparently put something on Gab. Why don't they shut down all these people who are putting crazy crap on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook?
Or the New York Times.
Hey, shut down the New York Times. Yeah, you deplatform the New York Times. That's a good. We should make a T-shirt that says that.
Yeah.
But that's the Twitter stuff, and then of course, Charles, you know, we as always like to tell people about the very convenient playlist on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel, and that's this Sunday with Charles playlist that contains every episode of Sunday with Charles, as well as every episode of Charles Ortel is Closing In. Today is our 116th video together, Charles.
Yeah, thank you. And it's about, I believe, on average, I haven't done the precise math, but they average about 2 hours.
It's a lot of video.
And we were told at the conference yesterday that in a pitch, if you want to do a pitch video, the wisdom is it's got to be less than 2.5 minutes, and the average attention span of a viewer is up to 30 seconds.
Oh, I would say 90 seconds is a long video for something like that.
Right.
But obviously we're going for something much different. The other thing that occurs to me, Charles, is I haven't made 116 videos with anyone. So there you go. We've passed a milestone there. That's very good, of course.
Yeah, and on those, our audience, our target audience for these videos includes investigators, journalists, governments around the world, and in particular professionals who are working for private foundations in the United States and elsewhere who have donated to these frauds.
Right.
They are now on notice and have been on notice for months that they have made, in my opinion, taxable expenditures, which are big problems for the 50 or so private foundations, including the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, many big, the Bloomberg Philanthropies, the Clinton Family Foundation, many of these private, Barbara Streisand Foundation, many of these foundations face substantial tax exposures should the IRS wake up, which I suspect it could be waking up now that they need to close a massive budget deficit gap that was bad under Bush, widened enormously under Obama, and now in a rising interest rate environment is getting ever bigger.
Did I ever tell you about the time I was over at Barbara Streisand's house?
You did mention that, yeah. House is, right? It's a compound.
It was a huge, impressive house right on a mountain, like a cliffside in Malibu, and I was mostly talking to James Brolin, but got to meet Barbara Streisand. She was nice to me. I tell you, a lot of pictures on the piano of her with the Clintons, her with Marvin Hamlish. I mean, there is a lot of stuff in that house. She had a whole entire room dedicated, maybe I shouldn't say this, it's her private house, but whatever. Anyway.
Did she sing you a song?
Did not, but she
offer you a meal?
Yeah, the housekeeper made us some like baked ziti or something. It was pretty good.
What? No fucking.
Yeah. No, it was pretty nice. I would have to say Barbara Streisand was nice to me, but I was only there for a little while. They made you take off the shoes and then additionally put on little plastic baggies. Like, I guess my socks are not up to Barbara Streisand's sanitary standards. So.
Well, I find the reports of her supposedly leaving that compound to relocate to Canada. Yeah, it's not happening. If you told me the south of France, maybe. But
right, because it's like a beautiful pool, and the fence around the property is made of glass. So it's like you're just looking out on the Pacific Ocean.
That's nice.
It's beautiful. I mean, maybe it's 50 million. I can't really gauge how much a house like that would cost, but it was one of the most exceptional, top 2 or 3 most exceptional homes I've ever been in.
Good. So if we
of course,
could go,
I've never been to an Ortel estate.
No,
pale
like
in comparison.
Nothing. No. So we're going to get into this GE stuff in a minute, but I thought, as I like to try to do like to start just talking about some things that are in the news here. Now we have in the first story here, Hillary sets herself up as a feminist and a minority rights advocate, and people say, "Oh yeah, she spent her life, caring about children. She's a woman, she cares about the African American and person of color community." And I'm not buying it. I've spent time with Kathleen Willey and Juanita Broderick, Paula Jones, Kathy Shelton, and I would understand. I wouldn't agree with it. I would understand Camille Cosby's, decision to stand by her man. But I do not, because she's not a politician. But what I certainly do not understand is Hillary Clinton sticking by Bill Clinton, particularly now in the Me Too era. There's no reason for her to stay married to Bill Clinton at this point. Well, and for her to claim, as that she's sitting there, she's an advocate for women, that women's voice, women need to be believed. And now with this recent statement, making light of it, the allies of the Clintons are trying to say, oh, she was just joking, saying that Cory Booker and Eric Holder, they all look alike, ha ha ha. I mean, I'm sorry, you don't get a pass for that.
Right.
If it were, Hillary Clinton has spent, 50 years now in the public eye, 45 years in the public eye. She's been on every major, conceivable outlet in every format, and she can't claim she has no media experience. She's been speech coaching and this and that. On the one hand, to go down to the South, as she did during the campaign.
With the hot sauce.
And then speak in a fake black Southern accent.
Did she do that?
Yeah. It's pandering of the worst sort. And yet, think of all these people in the crying zones on university campuses who today are claiming, somebody was saying 25% of all the students at universities claim they're suffering from PTSD because Donald Trump won in November.
That's absurd.
That group, to believe that it makes any sense to revere Hillary Clinton today tells me something very scary about the Democratic Party.
Yeah. I've depicted Hillary here in my interview with Larry Nichols yesterday.
Did you get any flack for that?
I think my mom didn't like it, but other than that, it was, obviously this is a political satire of Hillary Clinton. I think the title of this video is Hillary Clinton is a Racist. So that's why I did that. Obviously this is inappropriate. I certainly wouldn't put on blackface. And I also did it because of the whole dust up with Megyn Kelly. Like, how stupid are these people that they're like,
right.
What was that show? Amos and Andy.
Amos and Andy, yeah.
It was like 1940 or something, right?
Right. Well, I'm not suggesting that I'm in favor of white people putting on blackface, but I am in favor of people of all ethnicities and sensibilities having skins thick enough to poke fun at themselves. I think lighthearted humor, making fun of yourself, appreciating it, people have foibles, it can hurt. You don't want to humiliate people, but I think America would be a lot better off if we could relish humor as opposed to immediately saying that, oh, this provokes, I'm triggered, this is ridiculous. You said what about me? It's just, we got to grow up a little bit here.
Hillary Clinton is such a dope, though. It was just an unbelievable comment, and she said it within seconds of saying, like, well, I don't want to insult people. I don't want to. Let me just make the most blatantly racist joke I could possibly make.
Right.
Who could be insulted by that?
Yeah, amazing. So then if we go back into the slides quickly, please. Then we have this story I want to spend some time on, this second story here. this is outrageous. I believe it to be true. It's... remember that Bergdahl exchange when
yes.
I think it was the Rose Garden, they had Bergdahl, who we exchanged 5 people in Gitmo to get this Bergdahl, who I think will end up, I think he was found guilty, right?
Well, didn't he go AWOL and join the Taliban or something? Why the hell did they
And
even
people
want him
died
back?
trying to get him back.
Why didn't they just shoot him?
Well, we don't do it. But the point is that here Obama made such a big deal of bringing the parents in, exchanging pleasantries and allowing the guy to make a speech, the father to make a speech in, I think it was Pashtun or some foreign language. And it turns out that the 5 people that we exchanged are all now back with the Taliban, as Barack Obama likes to pronounce it, and very heavily involved. They're supposedly negotiating for peace in Afghanistan on behalf of the Taliban. What were we thinking here?
Who are they negotiating with? The United States?
Yeah, behind closed doors. But the point is, these people were in Gitmo, and we let them out, in theory, because it was safe, and Qatar was going to take responsibility for making sure they didn't drift back into the fight. Now we learned all 5 of them are back in the fight, and very much working with the Taliban. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
We got to stop Qatar now, Charles.
We tried to do that. I think
yeah, you should have stopped them before.
before they started.
You know, we did an episode last night of More Pain, which is one of the shows that's available only on Patreon. And of course, Michael Moore's book, Pain, How We Dismantled the FBI in Our Pajamas, is out, and had a really lengthy conversation with Michael last night. People can definitely log on to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and catch that episode. The internet is really slow to load this morning. I'm trying to do these things as quickly as I can, but sorry about that, Charles.
It's okay.
People will be interested to see that video, even though it might take a moment to load if you try to watch it while you're live streaming. Anyway.
Good. So, you know, this Bergdahl exchange, I think, will be viewed for what it is, which is just insanity. And, you know, in the same suite of accomplishments as the Iran deal and the climate deal and all these other deals that made no sense. Then we have this Ben Rhodes guy. Now, Ben Rhodes is the person, from memory, who Obama wanted to get to be on the transition team with a security clearance between election in November of 2008 and the inauguration, and he was turned down. And this guy Rhodes, he's got one major arrow in his quiver, which beyond his Obama ties was that his brother was the president of CBS News. And this guy bragged about how easy it was under the Obama years to manipulate the mainstream news, right? And here's a story by Joe Concho. I think it's pretty fair-minded at the hell.
And these guys aren't related to Cecil Rhodes?
Maybe it's a common name. I don't know. But they talk this here. The brother of when Ben Rhodes, the brother of CBS News President David Rhodes, literally bragged to the New York Times how easy it was for the administration to dupe reporters when shaping a narrative to their liking. Now, you know, maybe it's gotten to the place where the reporters based in Washington, D.C., you know, are so interested in staying on the right side of a Democratic administration that they'll do anything. You know, you give them a pie made out of vomit and they'll wolf it down and say it's apple pie. I mean, because the Obama administration made it. But, I mean, I would have thought that people who are in the business of investigative journalism would just recoil at this. And especially thinking about what the Obama administration allegedly did to Cheryl Atkinson, to James Rosen, to a whole bunch of credentialed reporters, that they're spying on those people, and simultaneously any potential critic, you know, or any potential friend will give you this morsel that will say is true and you can trust us, and will lie to you.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, I'd like to introduce this guy to Laura Loomer, who says these 27-year-old journalists literally know nothing.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
I wonder how he would like being loomered.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
So then we had this, before we hit this fourth link, we had some back and forth. The folks at Judicial Watch allege that charities are involved, American charities are involved, orchestrating these caravans of migrants. And one of the guys, I think it was Chris Farrell, was on Lou Dobbs' show. Right. And I've seen Chris Farrell as a very accomplished, I think, lawyer and investigator. He was a favorite of Lou Dobbs, and Lou got so incensed, supposedly, that this guy was making these claims, which I think are true, that American charities, and in particular those backed by George Soros, may be instigating these stunts, which is very much in line with the type of stuff that I believe George Soros does do around the world.
Why would Lou Dobbs get upset about that?
Well, maybe because George Soros called up somebody really high up at Fox and said, you know, this is not going to end well for you guys if you keep this stuff up. Wow. Maybe they were threatened. But here you see this has 176,500 views.
Wow.
in a pretty short time. And what I would note to anybody in the Trump administration is watching this, if it is the case that charities are being used, charity money and resources are being used to orchestrate this stuff, you can yank the tax exemption of these charities for this type of behavior. This is not lessening the burden of government.
No, I imagine that would be quite a bill if they yanked the tax exemption.
For the Soroses? Yeah. Then we have this thing which is quite interesting in Wyoming. People are doing studies of, early voting, what's going to happen. Wyoming is a state that is pretty small. And this is saying that 12,000 voters between July and September have changed their affiliation. If we go down, that's probably like 12% of the population, maybe more than that, voting population. If you go down the page a little bit, it breaks it out. And it says, look at this, it's really interesting. Of this 12,500, 6,057 Democrats became Republicans.
Wow.
And 4,355 unaffiliated persons became Republicans, which means that 10,000, roughly 400 people out of 12,500 have shifted towards Republicans in a state.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, well, and our mutual friend reminded me that one of the reasons that happened is likely that Wyoming is very much involved in resources, and in particular, the Powder River coal basin.
Coal.
So the resurgence of coal and coal jobs and the spill-off effects for the Wyoming economy are probably huge. But that's a big move from July to September only. It doesn't talk about what might have happened before then. We can't get a sense of trend. But this augurs very well for whatever's going to happen in the vote in Wyoming.
I'd call that a red wave. There's something very America about seeing this voting stuff set up in a high school gymnasium. Yeah. I like that picture.
Yeah, I remember my fond memories of gymnasiums like that, and not so fond memories of falling in the middle. Those floors are really hard.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like a homecoming kind of a thing where
now we have this we should talk about these Mueller allegations against Mueller, which could be totally smoke invented. And we have to, it'll be interesting to see the degree to which the media handles this and contrast it to the allegations made by Avenatti against Kavanaugh.
Yeah, good point.
I put this up here not because I say I have a point of view yet. We don't have to have a point of view on October 31st because they've promised that we'll see additional hard evidence tomorrow at, I think it's noon in Rosslyn, Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I spoke about this briefly with Michael last night on More Pain that people can see on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/truepundit. And the thing is, this is coming from Jack Berkman and the same people that put on that press conference about Seth Rich, where they had this witness, Luke Anon, who supposedly was the breakthrough witness that was going to crack open the Seth Rich murder. And Dr. Corsi asked me to contact Berkman to arrange a polygraph test. And Kevin Shipp got involved, gave us some advice on how to select a polygrapher and this and that. And Jack Berkman politely agreed on the phone, said absolutely he would do it. And then immediately the team that he was working with started saying they weren't working with him, started putting out false statements about me. We haven't heard anything about this Luke Anon. We haven't heard anything about the evidence that the testimony that he presented about Seth Rich. And then here we now have the same guys, Jack Berkman, Gateway Pundit, putting out this information. I don't know. I dislike Robert Mueller as much as anybody, but I think this is...
We'll wait and see. I put this up here more to make the contrast between, allegations are made this way against Mueller. How long did the circus go on against Kavanaugh?
Right.
Now, it's refreshing to see that Senator Grassley, has decided to have 2 criminal referrals so far, for the stunt that Avenatti, in theory, a member of the bar, pulled there against Kavanaugh. But we can move on, I think, to the next link.
Yeah, speaking of members of the bar, people will remember that it was only 2 weeks ago on More Pain that Michael presented us with testimony from his sources that Mr. Mueller was a booze hound, so they should ask him if he likes get Cory Booker to ask him if he likes drinking during the day.
And the next one is from our friend John Solomon. This one here is piece asking a great set of questions. Why is there not more outrage over the delay in finding out what truly happened with the FISA court? I mean, why isn't the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court up in arms over the likelihood that that warrants were sworn out under false and misleading premises? You know, there's false and misleading premises, getting things by acts of deception under false and misleading premises. This stands at the heart of fraud and the heart of the way the Clintons conduct their lives. You know, obtaining things of value under false pretenses. Why aren't more, there's your friend Carter Page, why aren't more people pushing in the crowd and elsewhere the Supreme Court to say, wait a minute, the headline here is that the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, FISC, has been lied to. And this court has enormous powers that actually I would argue maybe it shouldn't have. But and we're told, well, don't worry, they meet in secret, they take the stuff seriously, and if there ever were abuses, which are unthinkable, we'd obviously do something about it.
Yeah,
how come they're not doing anything about it?
Well, they're meeting in secret. Why is that supposed to make us feel better? I think that's a pretty huge problem. There was a good, I think it was Laura Ingraham interviewing Trump yesterday, talking about how come he's so friendly with our buddy Mr. Hot Dog Man, Rat Rodenstein.
She asked some tough questions about that?
She just said, it seems like you guys are getting along. What's up? And Trump said, I get along. And then he just moved on to the next thing.
And we're going to move along. So I think this will get us to a link where we can check and see where the GE... Oh yeah, these are recently in the news. Look at this. There are 93, if you just punch in GE and news, 93 million results.
Wow.
And the headline, I mean, Seeking Alpha is you know, not necessarily at the highest level of analysis. There's some good at, but it's pretty much negative opinion after negative opinion. So where, before I got on this project of exposing GE, I was very much in the minority of people who thought there were problems in GE in August of 2007. In fact, as I would listen to earnings calls, to give you a sense of how in the tank Wall Street was for GE, they used to, the way they would do it is they'd have a dinner the night before the earnings call, earnings press release, and preferred analysts would be invited to the dinner and it'd be fancy, and I never even would go to such a thing or would want to go to such a thing, but I've been told the dinner was very nice and you hear all this inside stuff and you get a chance, the press release is embargoed, you get a chance to write your research report
before the press release.
Before press release is issued. And they got to the point where they made light of the fact that under Immelt, you'd ask him a question and it would be, you know, Truman's friend. He had, Jeff, what do you think about the prospects for power? They're great. You know, and it got to the point he would use every adjective was great. Everything's great. So somebody said, well, why don't we do this? There's a transcript of the the earnings call. Why don't we create a gradeometer? And we'll count in each earnings call how many times the management says great. And then we'll compare that to the previous press release. And if they use great less frequently, that means the prospects are not as great as they should be. So this, I mean, and it got to the, I was listening to this and people who were supposedly paid a lot of money to study this mess, coming up with this kind of inside baseball, jokey, fun, right away I realized these guys aren't doing serious work. And yet, GE would hold, not only would they hold quarterly press conferences, they would also have, you know, special industry events where you pick an industry, they'd present at that, they'd go present before, and it was basically a bunch of hooey. It was all, you know, wrong, and it, you know, one could look back at this and learn from it and say, management has actual responsibilities under publicly traded company managements, have actual responsibilities to issue materials that are not false and materially misleading. You can't go down and say, well, our business is so freaking complicated that if you wanted to, you know, make a pile of, you know, our tax return and then our filings for a given year, it would be taller than the now no longer World Trade Center with just so much information. so you don't want to look over there at that stuff. We'll give you this cartoon over here, And actually, you're going to think this is not true, but we might do a thought experiment while we're here. I knew I was onto something well before this event happened, but I forget which Super Bowl it was.
Superb Owl.
Superb Owl.
Yeah.
But GE debuted this commercial that a whole bunch of people had come up with under Immelt. And their tagline, I've told you, was imagination at work. You'll see, we're going to show for the first time some of the work that I did on GE, and we're going to provide links to it so you and the crowd can read it. See for yourself. Look, I titled my thing on GE, Too Much Imagination at Work, ? And eventually I removed the question mark. And on the Clintons I did, it's false philanthropy ? And the question mark has been off of that since
gone.
Long. That's question marks, those are done. But so I'm sitting there and I think I was watching the Super Bowl, it didn't really register what I was watching, and I see these power lines, and I see this scarecrow, and this scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz singing "If I Only Had a Brain," and that was the GE commercial for Imagination at Work. You paid money for this to broadcast it in the Super Bowl?
They should have just got Janet Jackson. Would have been
it was ridiculous.
Much better commercial. Charles, real quick on this. Speaking of nonsense, this stands out at me that GE wants to build virtual power plants using blockchain. Now,
and they've opened a cannabis division as well. I'm making that part up.
Well, that would probably be successful. But this whole fact that they're talking about blockchain, now blockchain is obviously valid and useful technology, but it's one of these things like, maybe you've said this, I've heard people say it, it's like the .com revolution. Everybody just wants to put some press release out. 6 hours ago, their stock is tumbling. They put out some press release about blockchain, and people are like, oh, let's invest in that. What the hell is a virtual power plant? I don't know if we have time to go into that right now, but
GE is very good, I suppose, at delivering virtual financial returns.
Yeah, I think a lot of scams are trying to use the hype of blockchain, including Steemit.com, to try to get some scams over on people.
It's Scam I Am, I guess.
Scam I Am.
So this will give us the GE price.
It's great.
Oh, it's back up. 1010. It was as low as 980 was the low today.
Somebody just made a bunch.
Yeah. Well, not so much. And we'll see. This is typically what happens. Now we're in the lunchtime moment. So what happens is there's a lot of action in the beginning, then there's lunch, and then people come back from lunch, and most of the big action is going to happen in the last 15 minutes or last half an hour of the day.
Because everybody's had a few martinis at lunch.
I don't know. Most people don't drink at lunch, but it's not so much that. It's just that the people, there are various rules of trading, and people will look at this and they'll begin to say, you know what, I don't like
drinking at lunch.
It's Mueller time. I don't like the tone of this, and I want to get my sell order in, and so you could see. I don't think in this environment we're going to have some genius investor say, I'm buying 25 billion worth of common in GE, and I'll be an anchor investor, and trust me. I don't think you're going to see that. You could see continued pressure later today. We'll find out. Now, I do want to give some props, I think is the word, to LifeSet, which is a Laura Ingram was associated, I think is associated with LifeSet, and I was asked by a friend of mine to make some predictions for what I thought might happen in 2018. And I talked about the Clinton Foundation January 1st, 2018, the two Clinton issues that could shake America in 2018. And what we're going to see here, we have our friend Jan Weinberg, who's done a lot of work with the GE contributions and
that's true.
And business angles and the Clinton Foundation emails. And the Clinton
That's how you and Jan became acquainted? He was researching GE and he found you.
Right. So we have our Mark Tapscott, a friend of mine, a very good journalist, wrote some of this up. And I think we may see that this Clinton Foundation fraud moves into high gear after the election. we may see that, that the temperature goes way up. I can well understand before the election that the Trump administration would not have wanted to give the Clintons the excuse of rallying what remains of their base to say this is a political vendetta.
Right.
So push that out past the election. Hope that, I can imagine the rationale, hope that the Trump various speeches and rallies actually move the needle. But we're seeing this Steve Hilton, who has agreed to come on our show, we haven't got it scheduled yet. He, in the last 24 hours, did 7 minutes or so where he calls the Clinton, I think the title below is something like, it's Swamp Watch. And
that's not for telling time in Louisiana.
The Clinton Swamp Monsters, the Clinton Foundation. Now this may have been an old one because I see we don't have a government. This may be an old video, but it's something that was published in the last 24 hours, and it reminds us that this fellow, Hilton, who's English, seems to be aware of the degree to which the Clinton Foundation is nothing more than a swamp creature. So if we go...
It's almost like a home for retired swamp monsters.
Right.
It's assisted swamp living.
Yeah. So here, this is something I've never shared in this way before, but if we hit the first link, and I'm going to tell you how this presentation is going to explore how the Clinton Foundation and GE scandals are related. This is a presentation, you can see here, that was done on the 24th of February 2008, 3:57 p.m. This was, and we don't disclose the media organization, but this is something I provided to one of the very important media people. You see this Too Much Imagination at Work. And this, you can read this at your leisure, but this is proof that in February of 2008, well before GE missed in April of 2008, I was all over this question of GE being a bad bank, pretending to be hidden inside an industrial company that was not in the place where it should have been. And I forget how many pages this is, and this was meant to be a short pitch. I don't know, this is probably too long for a movie pitch or a media pitch, but for we in the banking world, this is the type of stuff you would write up for a big boss to get them interested in investing resources to study something carefully. So this went out, and none of the firms were interested in doing anything until GE missed in April of 2008. I think it was like April 9th or 10th or something like that. And the miss then was less serious than the miss that we saw Tuesday. Now here's, to give you a sense of how bankers and investors write things up, this is a summary, believe it or not. There was a series of research. Some people contacted me by email and said, hey, could you give us a copy of your GE research? This is something I wrote in the 21st of August 2008 as we were headed back. I'd gone down to the Bahamas to warn some very wealthy friends of mine that I saw a crash coming, which this is before the crash, so August 21st, 2008, and a tremendous amount of detail in this summary of what I saw and what I thought might happen. And you can read, this is not something that you're going to want to read right now, or I'm not going to read it out loud to you. It's pretty detailed, but it gives you a sense of the kind of work you can do when you look at publicly traded companies. And in short, it was clear to me that GE, every day that passed, its situation was getting more and more dire. The Chinese Olympics in 2008 were just almost finished, and I surmised before the real crisis bit that once that was over, that all hell was going to break loose. And I explained my reasoning in this memo, and sure enough, that's what happened. Within 3 months, not 3 months, 2 months of that memo, GE was on the ropes. Then in February of 2009, this third thing, I was in Europe. I traveled, this period I was all over the world traveling, warning friends. Here's another memo I did on the 2nd of February 2009. We're providing this to you free of charge. So you just get a sense of the type of work that it is possible to do off publicly available information. General Electric is enormously more complicated than the Clinton Foundation. I mean, so if my theory and my belief, or the message I'm trying to send to these accounting firms, if I could see this at GE well before other people saw it, there's a chance, it might just be a small chance, that I'm seeing something at the Clinton Foundation that other people haven't seen yet. And if you're an auditing firm, probably not the smartest thing in the world for you to bet against our work on the Clinton Foundation without exploring, what is the state of GE? Did you at these auditing firms see the problems that I saw at GE with all your resources? I don't think so. And I enjoyed writing this, and again, we provide this to you free of charge. There's a lot more I could provide, but I think for now, 70 or 80 pages of text is perhaps more than most people would want to see anyway. In July, I got involved heavily going on CNBC and Bloomberg and lots of the shows. In July, I was on something called Yahoo Tech Ticker, which, down there at the NASDAQ site, and I had been asked for a price target on GE, and I said it's only worth $2. And this guy, Glenn Hall, who was a nice...
Outraged.
Well, he wasn't happy. And so he wrote this thing sort of criticizing me. So I got him on the phone. I said, Glenn, if you want to savage me for my opinion, why don't you give me a chance to answer? Why don't you talk to me first? And then, now that you have me in the line, why don't you let me write a response to this thing? He said, okay, if you want to do that, you can write it. So you'll see in the next next link, I wrote it. Let's see, where is it? Yeah. And the thing that's interesting about this, it's the first time I had an editor, was to do this piece. And I put the thing in, and the guy just slaughtered my first paragraph. And I said, Jesus, Glenn, all right, I'll make these changes, but what else do you want me to do? Just take this first paragraph as I've edited it, we'll put it up in the beginning, and then everything else that you wrote, you can keep there. I said, okay, we'll do that. So we put it in, and I didn't know metrics back there, but this piece, I think, got over 100,000 views quickly, like in a day.
Do you attribute that to good editing?
No, I absolutely. I've been through a lot of editing now, and the most valuable person to a writer, I think, is an editor. Fantastic editors are worth their weight in gold, and they tend to be, far better than the average writer. And I love editing.
Huh.
And I'm of the point of view that you can always improve. It may not be like a movie, but with writing, with more time, you can always improve it.
Well, that's absolutely true of a movie.
Yeah. So then, I'm not doing this to brag, but when people say, did Charles get any attention for GE? If you just pair my name with General Electric, and you could also do it with GE, all you get is 16,400 results.
You're like a Google sommelier.
But so yes, I went out. These are just a few of the examples. If you restrict this to say, well, how many videos am I associated with? You go on the next link in the slide. And this one here. You get 346 results, which for business that's a fair amount. And some are beginning to see the connections, which I think are merited, between the work I did on GE, a complex for-profit fraud in my opinion, with the work I've been doing with you, Jason, and others on the Clinton Foundation, which is a very large, international, in my view, not-for-profit fraud.
Well, so some of this Lionel video is not about GE.
Which one? No, it mentions, I think...
Probably you talk about it.
Yeah. So then if we go back into the slide here, I tweeted this out in January. I sort of forgot about it. But I reminded people in January that my price target for GE remains unchanged at $2. And this is because I won't say who it is, but a very wise mentor of mine decades ago, I asked him, how much the stock was worth, and he said, it's $2 a share. I said, well, how did you get that so quickly? He said, Charles, all bankrupt stocks trade at $2 a share. It's one of my laws, his laws. And that's why I came up with $2. My contention on General Electric, and this is something that I think all boards and advisors to boards should take seriously, you should be required to make a fair, forget your assets for a second, to make a fair estimate of your liabilities, all your liabilities. You shouldn't be in a position where, because you're so complicated, you just put some problem liabilities over here in a shelf and tell people, don't look at that shelf, don't look at that legal contract. I mean, you should be forced to value your liabilities first, and then your assets. And if your assets are less than your liabilities, you're bankrupt. And you shouldn't be allowed, in England in particular, if your liabilities are greater than your assets, and you continue to go out asking people to lend you money, and whether in trade credit or financial credit or whatever, you are what's called trade. We don't have this rule. You're trading recklessly in England. When you do that, if you're found to have traded recklessly and you then go into the equivalent of bankruptcy, under English law, the directors are personally liable for the increase in the pain of the bankruptcy. They're not protected by the corporate shield. We don't have that rule. Maybe we should have that rule.
Why is a bankrupt company not trading at zero?
Because there's always speculation, and the people you were talking about in China, people look at it, it can't be that bad. I'll buy it for $2. I could have bought it for $60. And now I got it at $2. It's on sale. And it's not exactly $2, but around $2. Now, Alana Goodman, who's a young, gifted investigative journalist, wrote this piece about me May 5th, 2016. I give her enormous credit. She and another colleague and a competitor, Sarah Westwood, noticed that I had done work on GE that had been proven correct, and they picked up on the fact that I was now banging the drum hard on the Clinton Foundation, and this article got, I think, excited the interest of a number of people, including Zero Hedge, which then got Fox interested, and suddenly I was back in the place. They quote this thing where the Sunday Times of London said nice things about me. But anyway, this was a pivotal moment, and I would argue that we're now in another pivotal moment with this latest miss. It is humiliating for a large company like GE to have been kicked out of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, as it was, to have its credit ratings a mess, now to be under investigation by a widening SEC and Department of Justice investigation into GE, and again having to cut its dividend, and again having to miss, and again having to put in a new reserve, comes a point where you're out of the excuse business. I mean, maybe GE should, all those guys running GE should go into politics, because in politics, when you screw up, you get reelected. That's the way it works. But so the last thing here is this is largely, is very much due, Jason, to the work we're doing together. When you do a similar Google search result on Clinton Foundation, my name, and frauds, you come up with almost 11,000 results. And I'm doing this so that investigators and people and the accounting firms that are considering lending their name to the forthcoming Clinton audits, both for the Clinton Health Access Initiative, the Clinton Foundation, generally you ask management in a representation letter, are you aware of any allegations that your entity is a fraud? And if Bruce Lindsay and Andrew Kessler can sign a letter, well, we're not aware of that. We don't watch Sunday with Charles. We don't check. I mean, if you could write that letter today, and if the people currently at the Clinton Foundation are telling these accounting firms, yeah, we can write that letter, you got a serious problem, very serious set of problems.
It's like that Seinfeld episode where he's like, as you're aware, and then the guy gets called away, and then at the end he's back in the meeting, he's gone to work for them, he's like, well, as you're aware, the board of directors is under indictment.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. Was that Vandalay? Vandalay Industries?
I think Vandalay Industries he made up, but it was maybe Kroger Industrial Smoothing or something like that.
A great show. So if we go to the next, all right. A number of people sent this quote to me. We call him False Man. And if you hit this Twitter link, Eric Hansen really, I was prepared to idolize him because I thought, we did the Man for All Seasons video. That he was
idolize him? I thought.
Well, I thought he was going to stand up and and do the right thing. This is a tweet from Eric Hansen. Recent tweet: "Trust is the new currency." Really? If trust is the new currency,
he's broke.
You're dead broke. You're broker than GE. And this is talking about how the AICPA, which he chairs, and the boards of accounts, it can continue to serve the public. Here's false. This is Steve Covey saying this, but it's
Steve Comey?
Covey. Stephen M.R. Covey, or pronounce that name.
Seems like Eric Hansen spends a lot of time going to confabs and hanging out with fake tigers.
He said 12:56 p.m. 2 days ago. And I'm surprised, actually, that this gentleman, Hansen, is not more actively followed on social media. I mean, you look at the people who are following him. BKD, you see two BKD things who say, yeah, we believe in trust,
BKD
I guess.
Is really... Has he... Now, wait a minute. For real. This guy, Eric Hansen, is an accountant who, as far as I know, has a pretty limited social media presence. He's got 459 people following him, and he puts out a tweet, and he's getting this kind of retweet and like action. I've got 24,000 followers on Twitter, and I put out a tweet about, you know, stuff having to do with Laura Loomer, who is followed like crazy. What the hell is going on there? How is Eric Hansen? I think Truman the Tiger and all of his tiger cubs are in there retweeting BKD.
Well, it's Halloween. Celebrate Halloween. They're tweeting back and forth. They're going to a Halloween party tonight, probably.
Well, he should dress as Truman, Falseman the Tiger. I don't understand how Twitter's got that working, but okay.
So I say here that the three accounting firms that I'm thinking here, there's Price Waterhouse, BKD, and Cohn Resnick. They are standing right on the top of hell. And they better be looking down into hell, because I wasn't aware of some of these rules, but you know, the specifics of the rules. But we have some not so bright GE light bulb type people in the accounting profession who say, well, you know, I'm not required to look into the details. This is from a guide that was, I don't know that it was put, this version of the guide was put into final regulatory form. But this was something that was circulated, I think in 2013 or so, that says, a not-for-profit entity's failure to maintain its tax-exempt status could have serious tax consequences and affect both its financial statements and related disclosures, and it could possibly require modification of the auditor's report. Failure to comply with tax laws and regulations could be an illegal act that may, as discussed in Chapter 2, General Audit, have either a direct and material effect on the determination of financial statements or a material indirect effect. I mean, this is telling you, in simple terms, you have got a batshit crazy set of problems if you think that you can operate, that you can audit, provide an audit under BKD or Price Waterhouse or Cohn Resnick, that you can sign your professional name, think that you're going to keep your licenses, saying that something that is obviously not operated and organized as a charity is in fact a charity worthy of getting tax deferral or no taxation on the difference between the revenues and the costs. This is telling you in simple terms, you know, Falseman has got nothing on you. I mean, this is the kind of stuff in this environment with the GE thing going on, all this attention on the Clinton Foundation, you're seriously going to ask Cohn Resnick or maybe some other firm to sign your name on an audit for any piece of the Clinton Foundation by November 15, 2018. You are embracing the thrill and agony of defeat. You're pulling out a hand grenade, pop it in your mouth, take a peppermint hand grenade, put another one in your mouth. Yeah, that's what you're doing. And it does mention in here the types of things we've been talking about ad nauseum in these broadcasts. Examples of potential threats to federal tax-exempt status include material changes in the charity's character, like saying to the IRS that all you're going to be is a presidential archive and research center in Little Rock, but then immediately when you can't raise the money for that and Bill Clinton's out of a job, you go around and say, that's too boring. I'm not a librarian. I like librarians, but I'm not a librarian. I'm going to do is I'm going to fight climate change around the world. I'm going to get rich people's private planes, fly all over the place with movie stars, say I'm fighting climate change, say I'm fighting HIV/AIDS. That's a material change in the character of the Clinton Foundation, which was not disclosed, not authorized, has never been authorized, has never been accounted for properly. This private enormement and private benefit is where you operate a charity for your personal enrichment, which I would think is, you have an open and shut case against the Clintons for doing that. And it's worse, it's enormement, which is a crime, if somebody in a position to control the charity is taking this private benefit, which I think at all times has been Bill Clinton, and to a lesser degree Hillary, and maybe, if we want to be nice to Chelsea, we'll let her have, I was too busy doing other great things to take my job as vice chair, and I wasn't paid for it anyway.
Focused on diarrhea.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say it, but that's right. But anyway, it would seem to me that somebody who's, let's say, chief operating officer of BKD and chairman of the AICPA should be smart enough to understand that the Clinton Foundation array of false front charities is worse than a glowing toxic waste dump. It's the Fukushima, of charities. And the idea that the chair and the board of directors, the fellow trustees of the AICPA would let somebody so conflicted as Eric Hansen even consider at this stage what to do, what should the AICPA's position be, is crazy. And I think it actually puts the accounting profession in the United States in a very dangerous place. Accountants have been contacting me right and left saying, keep up this good work, Charles, make this known, put the pressure. There are lots of very decent human beings work their entire lives to do good work, important work, checking to make sure that financial statements are free from fraud, free from material misstatement, and they take their jobs seriously. They build up careers, they build up communities, they contribute to communities, and we can't let the chair of the AICPA, who is conflicted as the chief operating officer of BKD, be the one who says, oh, there's no problem with this. There's no problem. If there were a problem, I'd have to resign. So of course there's no problem.
Maybe they'll demote him from chair to stool.
Yeah, or worse, or lower.
Like a stool sample.
And then if we go to the next page, just to get a little bit more into the detail, all right, you're not allowed to construct an opinion about the state of an entity based using false facts. If you know as the accounting firm,
Isn't there no such thing as false fact?
Well, that's why I put it in quotes. I put it false facts.
Right.
Right. So here you'll see this is an AICPA thing. We're not going to pull the link up, but you want the technical stuff. It's all here. For audits of financial statements for periods ending on or after December 15th, 2012. That would be the 2012 audit done by BKD for the Clinton Foundation, which we've already been through, is a complete abomination. Which is not good. We've had broadcast after broadcast explaining why nothing in that audit is correct. That's important. BKD does the 2012 one. Price Waterhouse relies on that 2012 audit to do the 2013, 14, and 15. And then Cohn-Resnick relies on the work of PwC and implicitly on the work of BKD to do an audit in 2016. They may be doing an audit for 2017. For their sake, I hope not. But, maybe they're trying to put one together. If so, we've just given them an Excedrin headache, which they deserve. So
Bayer's got an Excedrin headache from Monsanto.
That's true. That's true. So here, the point is that when an auditor finds out that things that were presented in, let's say, a representation letter to the auditing firm as being true, if you subsequently discover those facts, those important facts, are not true, as an auditor, you have a duty to go, even if you're no longer working for the client, you have a duty to go to the management, the present management, and say, hey, I now know that key facts I relied upon to give an audit to your entity are not true. And I hereby call on you to work with us to change the report. Or alternatively, we have to make the world know that it cannot rely on our previously issued document. That's very important. Because, and if you make the decision with knowledge, if I tell you, Jason, listen, you gave me an audit, right? And I tell you that these 75,000 facts you relied on, and even these 3 facts you relied upon are all wrong, and that would cause you to change the conclusion you reached about the state of the audit. It would cause you to say, you know what? This massage parlor and HIV/AIDS thing in Little Rock and New York and all this stuff, it's not a charity. As Stuart Dean said, it's not even a corporation. So it can't be a charity. And you sit there and you say, wow, that doesn't sound very good. It sounds like I shouldn't have issued any of these reports. And then I say, well, it gets worse, Jason. The entire world has your report. They can get them, and all these state agencies, these foreign governments have published your work. And people who would try to make a decision this year to donate to the Clinton Foundation can go on the public domain, look at your false work, and say, well, yeah, this guy Ortel, he's not a CPA, he's not a lawyer, he's just doing podcasts with his friend Jason Goodman. Maybe he's just got a bug up his ass about this stuff.
He's a Clinton hater.
Yeah, Clinton, I'm a fraud hater.
I know. People like to say that.
I know. You can't sit there as the auditing firm, which is, has to, its people all have to be licensed. They have to maintain their licenses in good standing. The firms have to be in good standing. You can't allow inaccurate work, false and materially misleading work to be out there. And the reason, you shouldn't do that in the first place, but there's an economic reason not to do it. Comes a point, if you make the fatal flaw now at BKD and Price Waterhouse and Cohn Resnick are saying, Clintons will come back eventually, and any lawsuits that happen here, well, maybe, who knows, Hillary Clinton will be president again, or maybe Chelsea or whatever, will stall, will delay or whatever. No, you then become, and it comes a moment where you're no longer an independent auditor and you're a central piece in a criminal, racketeering, corrupt influence, conspiracy going back to October 23, 1997, that only flourished because your firm didn't do the right thing, didn't stand up, didn't yank their audits, didn't go to the regulator. And you start embracing the fraud, becoming centrally part of the fraud, then the Clintons say, well, okay, this is fantastic. BKD, I thought I was a charity. Right. BKD did all, they start turning on you. Right. So this is serious business.
Absolutely. And Kevin in the comments points out that note the statement, tax exemption is a privilege, not a right. So it's good.
That's a good point, Kevin,
to remember.
Yeah. So if we go to the next one, but wait, it gets worse.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be any free shipping. Actually, there is free shipping on those GE presentations. You just download them. So it's free. So another point here is that you can say, well, okay, Price Waterhouse, which succeeded BKD, and Cohn Resnick, which succeeded Price Waterhouse, they don't have to talk to each other. You could say that. And you'd be wrong.
Why didn't we use the cone head graphic for Cohn Resnick?
That's a good one. We'll do that. It's definitely
we used it already, cone heads, didn't we?
We can use it again. You give good cone. So this is excerpts from this statement here, which talks about when you discover misstatements. Accountants like, they throw in the extra letters and consonants, whatever. When you uncover fraud in financial statements by a preceding auditor. So you're sitting there, you're Cohn Resnick, and you reach a conclusion. Price Waterhouse was informed by somebody, I'm trying to think who it was, oh yeah, me, that there were problems with serious problems with the Clinton Foundation, and they nonetheless issued audits for 3 years, 13, 14, 15. When you discover that as Cohn Resnick, you're supposed to call, go see Price Waterhouse and say, look, we have reason to believe that your work is wrong. Are you going to correct it?
Nah.
And then, then the two of them should be going to BKD and saying, look, we both believe that all our work is wrong because your work is wrong. You're supposed to have this discussion. You can't go into the middle of the Sahara Desert, put your head deeply underground and hope that it's going to cool down thanks to global warming. You can't do that. You've got to actually engage. And with a public charity like the Clinton Foundation, these very many entities are out there, they are constantly soliciting, which is why I've been saying since day one, I said to the Attorney General's office in Arkansas, appoint a conservator. Get rid of this existing board, freeze your problem for the entity, appoint a conservator, stop soliciting funds.
What would a conservator do?
It would go back into the history and you'd freeze fundraising. You'd say, no more fundraising. We're going to establish what really happened here. We're going to chase this wherever it may lead. If it's BKD, we're going to go after, if it's Bill Clinton or Chelsea Clinton, Hillary, nobody's getting away with this. We're going to find out what actually, not like this book of fiction, what happened, what really happened at the Clinton Foundation. The conservator does that and with a duty of preserving the value of this entity, the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation and the allied entities, and it throws out all of the trustees, it throws out anybody it suspects could be part of the problem, and it gets to the bottom of this, which you can do.
I can't imagine why they wouldn't want that.
Yeah, right. So, it is crucially important, and this guideline and others set forth, the duties that accountants have, is crucially important for these people to be talking, not to be deciding, who's going to stand and who's going to go to the Clintons, Christmas party or whatever party they hold for the holiday season. This is a time to get really serious at Price Waterhouse, Cohn Resnick, BKD. There are a few other auditors that audited small pieces of this. Gary McGee and Company for the Alliance for a Healthier Generation. Their auditors were involved years ago with the Bush-Clinton-Katrina Fund, with the Clinton-Bush-Haiti Fund. Their auditors should be involved up with the Canadian entity, with these foreign entities. These auditing firms really need to go back and do their homework now. And again, I've been warning for weeks and weeks and months and months. This hard deadline is upon us. November 15th, 2018 is a serious, hard break. You can't put anything in after that. It's got to be filed by then. And if you don't file anything, then you're in even worse condition. So
Charles, Periscope is speculating that to prevent another Enron and Arthur Andersen debacle, they don't want to do this. But this would make Enron look like a...
This is worse than Enron.
Yeah, it would look like a church picnic compared to that.
It's worse because it's, at least, as I say, when you think about business, everybody in business has an angle. I mean, your profit is all about your angle. You're going to make something, and you're going to try to convince a customer to buy it for more than the cost of making it. That's in essence.
And you can charge whatever you want. If Apple wanted an iPhone to be $5,000, they could.
Right.
They're under no obligation to make it a good value.
Right. So when you think about what's going on in for-profit land, most people are skeptical of business. They say, "What's the hook? How are you?" I always ask when somebody tries to sell me something, "How are you making money off this?"
Right.
It's
simple. We enslave Chinese children.
Oh, that's good. I'll take 6 of them then. But in not-for-profit land, you're not allowed to have an angle. You're not allowed to have private gain. You're not allowed to have enormous. You're supposed to do what the hell you told the IRS and the state people and the international people. You're supposed to do only what you told them you were going to do. That's your authorized tax-exempt purpose, which is to be a presidential archive and research center only in Little Rock, not New York or Boston or London or Africa or whatever, just in Little Rock. That's where you're supposed to be. And this standard, I would point out, or this set of guidance, applied from March 31st forward, 1998. Now, why is that significant? The Clinton Foundation began its short life, its 21-year-old life, by deciding, what we're going to do? Bill's the president. We're going to beat this Monica Lewinsky crap, and we may get impeached, but in the Senate, we'll get through it. We can't file our first tax return in the middle of the impeachment saga, because if we do that, that's going to show the truth about how much money we got out of the slush fund, the second inaugural committee thing, where there's no report that anybody can seem to get, but there's millions of dollars left over. We can't file that report, because if we file that report, then the House managers and the senators are definitely going to win conviction, because this Clinton Foundation was born October 23, 1997, before the revelations of Monica were made public. We needed to pay for our expenses to defend against this, and we had this convenient slush fund as my working assumption, the second presidential inaugural trust, which people in Washington, D.C., these journalists that are so busy going to, comedy roasts and the White House Correspondents' Dinner and swanning around with all their fancy friends. They can't do basic work and say, what actually happened? How much money went into that second presidential inaugural committee? What was the money spent on? And for some strange reason, the Bushes, then the Obamas is not so strange, but now the Trump administration is willing to say, we're not going to make it necessary for anybody to see what was in that report, even though you're supposed to be able to see it because it was a publicly available document.
I think a lot of the money was spent on cigars and lip gloss.
Not going there. So here's where we're going to break some news. I have decided to provide to the crowd and anyone else who wants to see it, not images. So I took emails that I sent to Price Waterhouse, and I took an email that I sent to Cohn Resnick, and I herewith provide them to the crowd. This is unanswered emails sent in May and June 2015. Jerry Corsi wrote an article about what we were doing, WorldNet Daily, and Price Waterhouse complained So they asked.
Who did they complain to?
To Jerry.
Wow.
and they said, we don't like what you said here. We provided.
What did the doctor say?
And this is me talking.
Oh.
So here I'm giving them on May 14th, 2015. I entered the following list of questions, and you can read this. I did it very quickly, so there were typos. But if you just scroll through this, you read this, and accountants among you, consider these questions that I posed. May 14th, 2015 to Price Waterhouse. And keep going down the page if you would, Jason. You'll see how long it is. Just a few questions. I had no real problem. I didn't see anything wrong with it. So I just asked a few, general questions. We've talked about diversions, making an estimate of the possible. I compared the amount of money that Unitate said they gave to the amount that the Clinton Foundation appears to have said they received, and there was this discrepancy. The way I looked at it, these are large diversions. You're not supposed to have a penny of diversion. And so we posed this question. I asked, what checking did they do? Nothing. They can't say, I'm doing it this way because I don't want them to get away with saying nobody cared. Nobody asked us any questions. I cared. I asked some tough questions. And Price Waterhouse nonetheless completed an audit for 2014 by November 16th, 2015. And they stuck with the job. They didn't correct the way they should have corrected, in my mind. If you keep going, the 2014, more questions. I cited specific questions about possible related party transactions which were not disclosed. I had some additional questions posed on the 19th of May where I clarified some things.
So they still haven't answered.
And then not answered a single one of these questions.
But the thing I find interesting is, of course, someone challenged what you wrote, and even if they were totally wrong, you were curious to know, well, what is it? Because you want your research to be rock solid. I would remind people to go back a week or two ago when I called Shane Harris and said, you've done some misreporting on the death of Peter Smith. He didn't say, what are you talking about? What did I get wrong? He hung up the phone on me.
Right. Well,
it's very telling.
We'll keep going, though, Jason. This just goes on. All right.
Wow.
And
the hits keep coming, Charles.
And going back just a page, I say at the bottom, the concern here, the Clinton Foundation is not public, but if you engage in improper professional conduct, which is a defined idea, you can get barred from practicing before the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is a big problem for an accounting firm. That means you can't audit publicly traded stuff. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, but continuing to allow the Clinton Foundation filings to remain circulating in the public domain while they're fundraising, I don't know what the technical rule says, but strikes me as improper professional conduct, something that should be stopped and disciplined and called out. Yeah. So this is just a few questions that I sent to Price Waterhouse. Not to leave them, I felt I couldn't just torture them alone. So if we go to the next page, you'll see this is the continuation. That's the final bit where I warned them that I was going to approach government, so I did. When I heard nothing. Then here's another one I sent to the Cohn-Resnick people. That's John Alfonso. And I've copied this into the format because I didn't want to reveal email addresses and others. And I did make some minor changes just to
for layout.
For layout, and for other minor changes just to make it look pretty. But this is what I informed March 24th, 2016, Cohn-Resnick. So they had studied, they were mentioned in the Donna Shalala transmission as being an independent firm that had been brought in to assist Price Waterhouse think through whether they needed to refile any previous Clinton Foundation information. So they are referred to in the Donna Shalala transmission from the Clinton Foundation as saying, well, Cohn-Resnick didn't think we needed to do anything, and they studied this, they're independent. And so I gave some questions. I didn't give them my Price Waterhouse concerns, but I gave some specific information and questions to Cohn-Resnick. Price Waterhouse then completed the audit for the Clinton Foundation in 2014. They completed that November 16th, 2015. Then they completed the 2015, Price Waterhouse did in 2016, right after the election. And then Cohn-Resnick switched, and in 2017, Cohn-Resnick was the firm that put together the audit for the Clinton Foundation, resting all of its work on these unanswered questions, on this massive set of obvious frauds, and they were contacted by me.
I don't trust any recommendation from Donna Shalala because, you know, in my interviews with Scott Bennett, he's told us about how Donna Shalala somehow managed to get her nephew or her grandson or something to be his lawyer, and he basically got railroaded right into jail.
Yeah. Well, I don't trust her for a whole host of reasons. If you continue, she may not win her election. She's up for
good.
She's trying to become a congressman. Is that the final page there? I think
no.
So this goes on and on and on.
A lot of emails to Alfonso.
Right. And again, nothing back from them.
That's the final page right there.
Right. So, you know, here we are. It's October 31st. We got Halloween to look forward to here.
Oh,
we got the election.
We forgot costumes, Charles.
Well, I'm wearing mine.
Well, you're dressed as Charles Ortel.
I'm dressed as a nerd.
Well,
but
it's a great costume. You had me convinced.
Yeah. So this material is now out there. It's up online. People can download it. The accountants in the room can think about some of my questions and think about the implications. The regulators can think about it. The accounting firms that are thinking about, you know, resting on material that should be corrected can think about their final moments, you know, outside,
on the planet.
outside captivity. But I mean, this is not. We joke about it because, in part, we believe this is a very serious matter. But to get something like this considered, humor is a good way to open your mind and thinking about new things. And so that's why I think you try. I mean, I fail at it. You succeed at it, but
well, I've got nothing else to do except push all these buttons if I'm not making dopey jokes.
But the point is that this is a deadly serious matter for many reasons, not least of which is that this Clinton Foundation and now Clinton Health Access Initiative have never gotten lawful authority to distribute HIV/AIDS medicines around the world, and that's a project where if you do it wrong, you're killing people.
Yeah.
And so it's past time for the regulators to really understand what these people have been doing, that it is not charity, it's not even corporations, and it's an opportune time, frankly, for the Trump administration to make federal, international, and state cases against these dumb and dumber people who allowed the Clinton Foundation and now the Obama Foundation to march around behaving like racketeering criminal enterprises. You know, it cannot make sense to do this.
No. Definitely not.
So how about that, Jason?
Another excellent presentation, Charles. I don't know what to say. You know, with all of this terrible news, I do want to leave people with a little bit of an up note. You know, there's been all this banning going on social media, etc. It's nice to see that Periscope has made a change that I found quite interesting after seemingly odd and inexplicable inability to edit titles or do anything with Periscope videos. As of yesterday, you can now put custom thumbnails and edit the title. So I've been going through, and anytime there was a mistake in the title or we don't have one of the very diligently worked on you know, thumbnail graphics, I've gone in there and I've put the custom thumbnail and I've edited the titles. So a little upgrade for Periscope there. It's interesting to note this Periscope channel has been active for most of the 2 years that Crowdsource the Truth has been going. And of course, the YouTube channel on Crowdsource the Truth, we forgot to discuss, has grown to 69,000 subscribers.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, so that was nice. And it's interesting to see we're at 69,010 subscribers on YouTube, as people can see, so we're approaching 70,000. But for some reason, Periscope, which is, I believe, controlled by Twitter, it's stuck at 4,773. So I don't know why it's not growing in even remotely close to the same speed as YouTube. But I think people really need to focus on diversifying what we're offering here on social media, because you just never know when a platform might be shut down. There's a lot of people in the past, we've had malicious strikes brought against us. There are these malicious fake lawsuits that I've now been investigating with Brian Vukadinovich on the Counter Lawfare Report, a great new show that I've just started with Brian. It's really unique. I don't know of any other show that's examining abuses in the legal system, specifically in the way that Brian is. And he's not a lawyer, but he's so knowledgeable in your rights as a pro se defendant or a plaintiff. That's a fantastic show. And I do also want to remind everyone that tomorrow is November 1st, and we're going to have a very special presentation of Kevin Shipp's intelligence assessment. And normally that's a show that's available only on Patreon. So when people subscribe to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, you're not just supporting the free broadcasts that we offer, whether you watch them on YouTube or Periscope or Facebook or whatever the social media giant corporation is that's next to ban us. You're supporting those, but you're also getting access to exclusive content that you can only get on Patreon. And as a special thank you to all of our viewers, tomorrow's really, I think, historic broadcast is going to be made available to everyone, not just our Patreon subscribers. And we're doing that because we want people to really get a taste for what they will see on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You can also see the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp by subscribing to patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp. On tomorrow's show at 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, we bring together Kevin with Bill Binney and John Kiriakou. So we've got three of the most prominent whistleblowers from our clandestine agencies. Bill, of course, having spent 36 years with the NSA, and John and Kevin, of course, were with CIA. So that is an absolutely fascinating episode that I think people are going to really enjoy. And Charles, I want to thank you for another amazing episode of Closing In. I know you are. I can feel it closing in. It's not happening as quickly as people would like. There are even some comments of when is something going to happen, and the answer is
when it happens.
Exactly. And with that, Charles, thank you very much. Have a pleasant Wednesday, and I'll see everybody tomorrow. Thanks for watching.